Hey everyone, welcome to the main idea lesson. This is for the HESI A2 exam. Today you will be able to identify the main idea of a text. So throughout nursing school, you'll really need to be able to use this skill of identifying main idea. And this will be in things like charts, academic articles, and even just conversations that you have with your colleagues. So let's go ahead and dive into our vocabulary. This is a really great spot for you to pause and take notes. If the question that you are being asked on the HESI contains this vocabulary, you'll need to know what each word means. So I suggest you make note cards or study however you see fit. So the first term is main idea. It's just the big idea that the author wants the reader to understand. Second, we have the topic. So the topic is just the subject or the focus of the text, so what it's about. Supporting details are details that help develop and support the main idea. We do have another lesson about this, but it really helps to understand that this term now. Sometimes the HESI does try and trip you up and gives you a supporting detail as a multiple choice option when they ask for the main idea of a paragraph. So I don't want you to be fooled. I need you to know the difference between the two. Okay, so our key points for today are that the topic is the subject of a paragraph, a section, or an entire text, and it's usually one or two words that state what the text is mostly about. The main idea, again, is the big idea that an author wants the reader to learn or understand about the topic of a paragraph, a section, or an entire text. The main idea can be a phrase or it can be a sentence. Supporting details are details that develop the main idea. So I've broken this down into 3 easy steps for you. So here are your steps for identifying the main idea. First, you got to read the question first. Always read the question first to establish your purpose for reading. You're going to then read the passage and identify the topic. And then what you're going to do is ask yourself, what's the author trying to convey about this topic? What are they trying to tell me? So let's go ahead and start by diving into an example. I'm going to start by reading the question. So the question reads, what is the main idea of the paragraph? I'm going to go ahead and read this paragraph out loud to you. I will not do that when you are doing practice, but just to start us off, I'm going to start reading. So this passage is titled Growing Up, and remember, we're thinking about what is the main idea. As we grow up and mature, it is common to experience many changes ranging from height, weight, and even distinct shifts in our various preferences. However, a recent experiment has proven that even the mere smell we emit to others is influenced by our age, as well as other factors, ranging from our nutrition and the level of bacteria present in the body. Further, studies suggest that the majority of humans can correctly recognize the age of a person just by coming into contact with their scent. Like old people smell different. That's what that makes me think of. Okay, so what is the topic? Remember, the topic is the overarching idea here. I think that this topic is all about scent. So now that we know the topic, we need to figure out what the author is trying to convey about that topic. Okay, so for the purpose of mastering this skill, the next piece that we're going to do is try to answer this question, what is the main idea of the text, by ourselves without any multiple choice. So on your screen now, what you see are things that are highlighted from this paragraph. The mere smell we emit to others is influenced by our age, and the majority of humans can correctly recognize the age of a person just by coming into contact with their scent. So if I were to answer what the main idea of this paragraph is, I'm going to identify the topic first. It's about scent. Not only is it about scent, it's about how our scent changes. So I can therefore identify the main idea as we age, our scent changes, and most people can tell someone's age by their scent. So see how I did that? I zoomed in on the topic and used the details in the paragraph about the topic to identify the main idea. Let's try another example next, and this time we're going to be looking at multiple choice, which is what you'll see on your HESI A2. Okay, so this next paragraph is titled Studying Smell. So it has a similar topic as before, but it is a totally different paragraph. This will not happen to you on the HESI A2, but for the purpose of our lesson today, I just wanted to stick to something similar. So again, for this first lesson, what I'm going to do, since I'm walking you through this skill for the first time, is I'm going to read this paragraph out loud to you, and then I will kind of hold your hand and walk you through the multiple choice. So starting off, we're going to read the question, as always, to establish our purpose for reading. What is the main idea of the paragraph? So studying smell. According to a study published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal, human body odor undergoes perceptible shifts that can be obvious to even the most problematic olfactory systems. In other words, the human nose is advanced enough to detect even the slightest differences in human sense, especially when it involves perspiration. Scientists leading the study asked one group of volunteers, whose ages ranged drastically, to wear the same t-shirt for 5 consecutive nights. Then, the second group of volunteers was asked to smell the shirts and estimate the age of the people who had worn them. Interestingly enough, almost all of the answers were correct. Okay, so don't forget that before we dive into our multiple choice, what we need to do is think ourselves, what is the topic of this text and what is the author trying to convey or say about it? Then we can dive into the multiple choice. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so as I'm thinking about the topic here, I know that this is about scent and it has to do with human scent. So what is the author trying to tell me about human scent? Well, based on the information in this paragraph, I can see that the human nose is advanced enough to detect even the slightest differences in scent. And also, when this group of volunteers that was asked to wear shirts and then the other set of volunteers was asked to smell them, everyone could guess really pretty accurately what the age of the person wearing the shirt was. So the author is trying to tell us about scent and how it changes as we get older. Let's go ahead and look at the multiple choice. A reads, scientists used 2 groups of volunteers to study the human olfactory system. That's true, but I think there's a little bit more here, so I'm going to keep reading. B says the human olfactory system can detect only significant differences in human sense. The paragraph says something about slightest differences, so again, I'm going to keep reading. The study shows that people can estimate a person's age based on their scent accurately. I think that this is probably the best main idea so far, so I'm going to keep it, but we have to read D to make sure. A recent study suggests that in humans, the sense of smell is the strongest of all senses. There's no other senses mentioned, so I'm going to go ahead and go with C. Okay, so C is in fact the best answer. As you can see, it's highlighted on your screen now. So let's go ahead and go through each answer individually so that you can see why the correct answer is correct and the incorrect answers are incorrect. So here's our first one. Scientists used 2 groups of volunteers to study the human olfactory system. So this is just a supporting detail. It's not the main idea. This information is included to explain how the study was conducted, and it doesn't give us any information about the outcome of the study, which is really important in this paragraph. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at B next, and then also see why it's incorrect. So B reads, the human olfactory system can detect only significant differences in human sense. So as you can see highlighted on your screen now, there's a piece of a sentence that reads, the human nose is advanced enough to detect even the slightest differences in human sense. Even the slightest differences in human sense means that the nose can detect differences that are very small. So this answer is incorrect because it's saying the opposite. All right, here's another incorrect answer. A recent study suggests that in humans, the sense of smell is the strongest of all senses. As you can see in this paragraph on your screen, nothing is highlighted. There is no comparison made to any other senses of the human body, so this is false information. There's no mention of anything else. The study shows that people can estimate a person's age based on their scent accurately. So this answer choice includes the topic, which is scent, and what the author is trying to say about it, which is the outcome of the study mentioned at the beginning of the paragraph. The yellow highlights that you see on this slide are the topic and what the author is trying to say. All right, y'all, it's time to practice. Join me in the next lesson where we will dive into some main idea practice questions. I'll see you there. All right, everyone, welcome to lesson 2 in the main idea sequence. What we're going to start with right now is reviewing the steps for identifying our main idea. So step 1, always read the question. This establishes your purpose for reading. You need to know why you're reading, so always read the question. Step 2, read the passage and ask yourself, what is the topic? So if you're looking for a main idea, you need to know what the topic is. Lastly, you're going to ask yourself, what's the author trying to tell me about this topic? And then you'll be able to understand what the main idea is. Let's look at some practice. So go through those steps. Read the question. All right, now you know we're reading for main idea. Now what you're going to do is read through this paragraph, trending health. Then you're going to tell me, what's the topic? What's the author trying to say about the topic? And then you're going to look at the multiple choice and see if you can get it correct. I suggest you press pause here and then press play when you're ready to move forward, and I will meet you to review the answers. All right, so our best answer here is D. Dietitians who support body positivity recommend coupling healthy foods with their favorite foods. So let's go ahead and take a look at the answer explanation on the next slide. Here is our correct answer explanation. So I've highlighted some things on your slide that show you why this answer is the best answer. Many dietitians today support the idea of body positivity, which is our topic, pair their favorite foods with more fiber and protein, and keeping their favorite foods in rotation. So all of these details really add up to the main idea here. It contains the topic, which is health, and what the author wants to tell me about it, about body positivity and health. The author wants to explain that dietitians support pairing healthy foods with your favorite foods. Let's take a look at the incorrect answer explanation. It's important that you know why answers are incorrect so that in case you got it wrong, you don't make the same mistake again. So here we go. Many experts in the field of health and wellness agree that fiber and protein should be paired. So this idea is in the paragraph and it's highlighted on your screen, but it's only a supporting detail. It's not a big idea of the paragraph as a whole. The answer does not include the topic or what the author is trying to tell us about it. So we don't see anything about body positivity or what the author is trying to say about it. All right, here's our next incorrect answer explanation. Healthy individuals are more likely to find ways to better their mental and physical health. This answer option is not about healthy individuals finding ways to better their mental and physical health. It is more about how experts in the field support their clients in their journey to become healthier. So there is a piece highlighted on your screen here that reads, this may include obtaining mental health support and finding more effective workouts and healthier diet. So mental and physical health are mentioned, but it's not the big idea of the paragraph. It's actually a hook or an introductory statement here, and it's really intended for you to preview the information about the topic. All right, here is our final incorrect answer explanation. More people wish to become healthier today than ever before. So this answer option does contain the topic of health, but it really leaves out what the author's trying to tell us about health. So there are many people concentrating on their health, but there's no why or what or anything that has to do with the information that the experts convey in this paragraph. Okay, here's another example for you to try out. The paragraph is titled Salmonella. You go ahead and start by reading that question though. All right, now you know we're reading for main idea. So go ahead and read through the paragraph and try and get the correct answer. I suggest you press pause and press play when you're ready to move forward and hear my answer explanations. All right, so A is the correct answer here. Salmonella poisoning is serious and steps to prevent it should be taken. All right, so here's why this is the correct answer. This answer includes the topic, salmonella, okay? That's mentioned in that first sentence there. And the author wants to tell us that it's super serious. Even the word serious is even used in the middle of this paragraph, also highlighted on your screen. And there are ways to prevent it, like washing your food and hand washing. So this really embodies the big idea, the main idea of this paragraph. It's serious and there are steps to prevent it. Okay, so this next answer option reads, many people suffer from salmonella poisoning each year. That's true. 4,000 people is many people. That's mentioned in the very first paragraph. But this is kind of just an introductory statement of the entire paragraph. It's not the main idea. It's used, actually, statistics in the beginning of a paragraph are usually used to like hook you as a reader and make you want to read more. So that's all this is, not the main idea. All right, here's the next incorrect answer explanation. Symptoms of salmonella poisoning are severe and should be taken seriously. So you may have chosen this one on accident, but this is not the best answer choice, and here's why. It doesn't mention the key details that the author mentions about how to prevent infection, okay? So it does talk about seriousness, and it does talk about symptoms, but it completely leaves out this information about washing your food and hand washing for prevention. All right, so here's the last incorrect answer explanation. Washing food and your hands is one easy way to avoid infection. So in the paragraph, this is definitely mentioned, and it's a key detail that we need for the main idea, but it's not the entire main idea. This is just a supporting detail that does not specify that the infection mentioned in the paragraph is salmonella poisoning. So the main idea needs to be as specific as possible. This leaves out that idea about salmonella poisoning specifically. This could be how to avoid any infection, but we need to have the specifics to be able to identify that main idea. Okay, so you've made it to the end of lesson 2. Let's go ahead and just review. The topic is the subject of a paragraph, a section, or an entire text. It's 1 or 2 words that state what the text is mostly about. The main idea is the big idea that the author wants the reader to learn about the topic. Supporting details are details that are used to develop that main idea, and the writers of the HESI may try and trip you up by giving you a supporting detail in your answer options, but now you know it's not the same as main idea. Hey everyone, welcome to lesson 3 in the main idea series for the HESI A2 exam. What I'm going to do first is walk you through these steps just to review how to identify main idea, and then we will jump right into some independent practice. So do not forget that you always need to read the question first. It's one of the most important things you can do. It establishes your purpose for reading and allows you to understand why you are reading and what you are reading for. Step number 2, read the passage and identify the topic of the passage. Especially when you're asked about main idea, you need to understand what the writer is writing about in that paragraph or passage. Step number 3, ask yourself, what is the author trying to convey about this topic? What are they trying to tell you? And generally, that's the main idea. All right, as promised, let's go ahead and dive into our independent practice. What I want you to do is follow those 3 steps that we just reviewed. So start by reading the question, then dive into the paragraph, ask yourself what is the topic and what is the author trying to convey. I highly suggest you pause here and go through those steps fully and then press play when you are ready to review the answers with me. Good luck. Okay, so if you chose B, the death of Queen Elizabeth II caused criticism of her and the monarchy, you got this answer correct. Congratulations. Here is why this answer is correct. This answer choice includes the topic, which is Queen Elizabeth II, and what the author wishes to convey or tell us about this topic, that her reign caused criticism of the monarchy. Let's go ahead and dive into the incorrect answer explanations, just so you know where you perhaps went wrong, or just to give you a little bit more rationale. So this answer choice, the reign of Queen Elizabeth is noted as equally positive and negative, is just incorrect. The author does mention at the beginning, and it's highlighted on your screen, that she is personable, intelligent, and kind, but most of this paragraph really does highlight the negative aspects of the Queen's reign, so this cannot be true. This is not an equal weight of positive and negative. Here's our next incorrect answer explanation. Queen Elizabeth was adored by many people around the world. Again, this first piece of evidence that's highlighted on your screen here does show that some people do feel adoration for the Queen. This is not the main idea, though. It leaves out this whole chunk about how there's controversy surrounding her reign. Okay, last but not least here, we have Queen Elizabeth II passed away in September of 2022. So this is true, but it's just a detail that's added in the paragraph for some context. It happens to be the very first sentence. It's not the main idea. Okay, so here's our next paragraph that you are going to be looking at. It's our next practice question. Again, start by reading the question, read the paragraph, go through the steps of identifying topic, and ask yourself, what is that author trying to tell you about this topic? Press pause here and press play when you're ready to see the answers. Good luck. Okay, if you chose answer choice D, some schools have gotten rid of standardized entrance exams because they are biased in nature. You got this answer correct. Let's take a look at why it's correct. This answer choice contains the topic of standardized entrance exams at universities and colleges and the idea that they are biased. And this is what the author is trying to tell us about the topic. Here's our first incorrect answer and its explanation. Testing is one of the most important aspects of our world today. The topic of testing is correct here, but the detail about its importance is not mentioned in the passage, so this answer is incorrect. Remember, you have to have evidence in the passage to back up an answer choice, always, always. Here's our next incorrect answer explanation. When applying for college or universities today, one must take a test before you are admitted. This is incorrect. Although the paragraph does contain information about entrance exams that are required at some colleges and universities, this answer choice completely leaves out the fact that standardized tests are being overturned in certain institutions, and it's very important to our main idea. All right, here is our last incorrect answer explanation. Some students are unfairly treated by the school system. So this is only half of the main idea about how this is unfair. Entrance exams are unfair and can be biased. It does not include the idea that some academic institutions overturn this type of testing, which is important for our main idea and would be important to add to this main idea answer choice. Okay, so you made it to the end of this lesson. Congratulations. Let's just go ahead and review really quickly so that you can double check your notes and make sure you have everything set to move forward. So the topic is the subject of a paragraph. You will see this over and over again throughout the lessons. It's spiraled through the rest of these skills. The main idea is the big idea that the author wants the reader to learn or understand about the topic. And it can be a phrase or it can be a sentence. Supporting details are details that develop, explain, expand, add on to the main idea. There's a whole lesson about supporting details that's coming up for you, so stay tuned, and I will see you in the next lesson. Have a great one. Welcome everybody to the supporting details lesson for the HESI A2 exam. By the end of this lesson series, you will be able to determine whether a statement about a text is true or untrue based on evidence in the text. You will also be able to use supporting details to make inferences. Let's go ahead and dive right into our why. Throughout nursing school, you're going to need to be able to identify and analyze supporting details. Now, this could be in terms of data that you see or even evidence that's presented to you about specific cases that you're working on. Here's where I suggest you start taking notes if you are a note taker. I'm going to go over the key vocabulary. So just as a reminder, and we're really looping back here, the main idea is the big idea that the author wants the reader to understand. Evidence is quotes or ideas from the text that can be used to support a claim or the main idea. Now, supporting details are sentences that support key ideas such as the main idea in the passage. Okay, again, if you are a note taker, I highly suggest you take notes here. Our key points. So statements that are true about a text have textual evidence to back it up. Untrue statements do not have evidence in the text to support them, or there's not enough evidence in the text to support untrue statements. A supporting detail is a detail that helps develop a specific idea in the text. On this slide, I've outlined for you just a few examples of what supporting details might look like. So this could be facts and statistics. These could be examples, explanations, descriptions, or comparisons. So here are 3 steps to identifying supporting details in a text. First and foremost, as always, you need to start by reading the question. This will really help you establish your purpose for reading, and it makes it way easier for you to get through the question. Then you need to read the passage with the purpose in mind. So if your question is asking you to identify a supporting detail about a specific idea, you need to look for that specific idea. I want you to also ask yourself, which supporting detail or details helps me make an inference? Okay, so now that we've taken all of our notes and gotten all of our background knowledge, what I want to do is dive into an example. So here's our first example. We're going to start by reading the question. Which of the following is true regarding the most recent study into European forests? I'm going to go ahead and read this passage with you. I will not do that in lesson 2 and 3, but for the purpose of this lesson, I will. If you don't want to hear me read, you can press pause or fast forward. Totally understand if you don't. Here we go. Thanks to past studies presenting the number of trees in forests spread across Europe, environmentalists have been able to compare the results with recent data. The most recent study involved 26 European countries and examined the number of trees present from 2004 to 2018. Researchers defined the idea of a forest by looking at 2 specific categories of data. First off, the study includes forests that have been recognized by satellite images and which contain trees taller than 5 meters. Then it involves various estimates of forest biomass currently present on the continent. The latter figure considers all types of wood regardless of its size or origin. Thus, the study crosses the 2 categories of data to produce a wide set of results. So just revisiting this question, what we were reading for is what's true about the most recent study. So this study is explained in detail in this paragraph, so we really do have to dive into the answer choices to see what is true. Remember, supporting details can be things like facts, data, or quotes from experts, things like that. In general, there are going to be additional sets of information that support the argument or the main idea. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the topic here. This topic seems to be about a study done on the number of trees across Europe. And that's great. That links up with our question perfectly because our question asks us about European forests. So this is the beginning of the paragraph that's highlighted here for you that really takes into account the topic. So let's go ahead and take a look at some supporting details that stood out to me. Our second sentence is highlighted on your screen for you now, provides background information about the number of countries considered and the span of years that this study was done. This sentence is a supporting detail because it provides us with additional information about the paragraph's topic. Now, this next couple of sentences that are highlighted on your screen describe the study's setup. So finally, what's left on your screen that's not highlighted is the concluding statement. You don't need to know this explicitly for your HESI, but it's good to have an understanding that every paragraph will have a concluding statement. Okay, so now that we've broken that paragraph down piece by piece, what we're going to do is look at this same question in multiple choice format. So again, this is the same paragraph that we just read. And our question is, which of the following is true regarding the most recent study into European forests? Here's our correct answer. The study yielded data that could be compared to previous studies. This answer is correct because it aligns with the information presented in the first sentence here. It's what's true about this study. Let's take a look at the incorrect answer options next. Here's our first incorrect answer option. The study collected data from every European country. So the passage explicitly states that the study involved 26 European countries, and it doesn't say all. So this is not a supporting detail that supports the most recent information that has been found about this study. Here's our next incorrect answer option. The study only included forests that could be seen in satellite images. So the paragraph does say that the study included forests that were recognized in satellite images, but it also says that it used two categories when deciding what to include. The satellite images of forests were just one of these categories, which means that the statement is untrue. You can see this evidence highlighted on your screen now. Okay, so here's our final incorrect answer. The study concluded that forests across most of Europe were expanding. It's important to note here that there is really no conclusion about this study mentioned in this paragraph. The paragraph just explains that there were two sets of data that were analyzed in the study and breaks down how the study was conducted. Okay, so let's take a look here at example 2. This passage is titled Studying Trees. Now, we always want to read the question first to establish our purpose for reading. So let's go ahead and look at our question. Which of the following is not discussed as a possible reason for the recent and significant tree loss in Finland and Sweden? So we really need to look for details about Finland, Sweden, and significant tree loss to be able to weed out which is not discussed in the answer options. Let's go ahead and read this passage next to be able to see if we can answer the question. According to the authors of a study on trees, about half of the decrease in biomass and number of trees occurs in Finland and Sweden. I see these two details already. They hypothesized that the types of trees present in these forests may have something to do with the rate at which they are being cut down. Specifically, the older trees in Finnish and Swedish forests are desirable for producing certain wooden products, which are in high demand. Another hypothesis is that these areas are also popular for the production of fuel, which would result in deforestation. While these theories still need to be proven, it's evident that European forests are both on the rise and being reduced simultaneously. Experts believe that if deforestation continues at this rate, achieving climate neutrality by 2050 will be nearly impossible. What we're going to do next is comb through these answer options and see which one is not mentioned in the passage. Go ahead and pause the video here and just read through the answer options and see if you can choose which one is not mentioned in the passage. Okay, so our correct answer here is an increase in residential and commercial constructions. So, although an increase in the need for certain wood products is named as an overall cause, construction is something that is not mentioned as a recent reason for significant tree loss. So, this answer is correct. It is not mentioned in the passage. Here's our first incorrect answer option. The types of trees commonly found in 2 countries is incorrect. This is explicitly stated in the second sentence. It reads, they hypothesize that the types of trees presented in these forests may have something to do with the rate at which they are being cut down. Here's our next incorrect answer. The high demand for certain wood products. So this is explicitly stated in the third sentence and is highlighted on your screen. Last but not least, we have deforestation due to fuel production in the area. This is explicitly stated in the fourth sentence that is highlighted on your screen. Okay, everyone, so it's time to practice next. What I want you to do is head over to lesson 2. We will start with a review of the key points and then dive into some practice. I'll see you there. Hey everyone, welcome back. We are in lesson 2 for the supporting details series. We're going to start here by reviewing the key points that has to do with this skill, supporting details. So remember that statements that are true have explicit textual evidence to support them. Statements that are untrue are those that are not supported by the text, and so there's not enough or there isn't any evidence to support it. And a supporting detail is a detail that helps develop a specific idea about a text. Before we move forward to practice, I really do want to push you to understand that these are the 2 ways that the HESI is going to ask you these questions. Which statement is true, which statement is untrue, and they might also ask you about which is a supporting detail for a main idea or a topic. That's why we're practicing with statements that are true and untrue and all of that. Okay, so your first practice question has to do with this passage, Mysteries in Stone. What I want you to do is go ahead and pause this video here and read through the passage, attempt to get the correct answer. Remember to follow those steps. Start by reading the question. Ask yourself what's the topic, and ask yourself what inference can you make about the topic using the supporting details. So if you chose the rock formations helped the anthropologists formulate theories as to the most likely purpose of the rock compositions, you got this answer correct. Congratulations. As you can see from the evidence highlighted on your screen here, the rock formations helped anthropologists understand about what they were used for. Okay, so here is our first incorrect answer. The circular positioning of the rocks has narrowed down the period in which the compositions could have first been built. So the circular positioning of the rocks is not related to the time period in which anthropologists believe that they were built. It's just not something that we can say about this paragraph. So here's our next incorrect answer option. The formations suggested that architects from Great Britain were responsible for the construction of the rock compositions across Europe. So this is not a detail that's supported by any information in the text. Although similar circular designs were seen across Europe, the text explains that this is likely due to the sharing of architectural knowledge through travel, and it's not British architects actually traveling and building these across Europe. Here's our last incorrect answer. The circular positioning of the rocks has provided clues as to how these structures were built. So there are no details in the paragraph to indicate how the rock formations were constructed. So this answer is incorrect. Okay, so this is the end of lesson 2. You had one practice problem. Next, you're going to go into independent practice in lesson 3. I'll see you there. Okay, let's go ahead and dive right into our independent practice. The first passage that you see is titled Desertification. What I want you to do is pause, read the question, read the passage, and then attempt to answer the question. Press play when you're ready to move forward and see the correct answer explanation. Good luck. Okay, so remember, you are looking for what is not true about desertification according to this passage. So the correct answer is, its impact is irreversible once the process begins. This is information that is not supported by the passage because it discusses measures being taken to reverse or combat this problem. Also, sentence 3 that's highlighted on your screen states that only a portion of the arid land is past the point of no return, which implies that actions can be taken to stop or reverse the process. So here are the last 3 answer options that are all incorrect. It causes the land to become infertile, it jeopardizes the lives of humankind, and its seriousness has prompted nations to work together to develop solutions. So these answers are all incorrect because these are mentioned in the passage, and you can see these details highlighted on your screen. Okay, so let's dive into another practice question. Start by reading the question, then go ahead and read the passage titled Cloud Hunting and attempt to answer correctly. Good luck. Okay, so this is not described as a positive result of the cloud hunting project. Scientists are becoming more accepting of ancient ideas and methods. This is not stated explicitly or implicitly in the text. There's no evidence to support the idea that scientists were not accepting of these ideas before, or that they've become more accepting since this project. You may have gotten a little tripped up by the information I've highlighted on your screen. I just wanted to point that out to you. That doesn't align with this answer. Okay, so here are our incorrect answer options. Locals and environmentalists are working collaboratively. More water is available each day for nearby villagers and people. And local populations are becoming more self-sufficient. All really positive things, right? They're also all mentioned in the passage and highlighted on your screen for you. All right, here is another question for you. I want you to start by reading the question, then read the passage titled Effects of the Cloud Project, and attempt to answer it independently. Press pause and press play when you're ready to move forward. Okay, so here's our correct answer. The project and its results are promising as a response to desertification. The paragraph does highlight the fact that this project helps. This information on your screen really highlights how this project helps. Local Moroccan residents receive necessary access to water, and there are villagers that have extra time to receive training and self-sufficiency courses. Okay, so these next 3 answer choices are incorrect. The shift in climate allows for at-risk populations to create more opportunities for themselves. So the passage talks about the process of collecting fog to create more water, not a shift in climate. No new positive effects for those in isolated communities that emerged at the close of this trial. This is actually the opposite of what's true. This paragraph highlights multiple positive effects for at-risk communities, including time for new training and access to water. Creating new developments has allowed women to continue pursuing higher education. So this quote about access to training and self-sufficiency courses is mentioned, but not higher education. Higher education refers to like college or university level training. So if you got tripped up on this one, I totally understand. It's the good answer. It's not the best one. Okay, so here's another opportunity for you to practice. What I want you to do is start by reading the question, read the passage titled The Origins of Water, and attempt to answer it independently. Here's the correct answer. Scientific knowledge of chemical properties has proven theories that had previously been commonly held about the origins of water on Earth to be untrue. So the highlighted sentence on your screen provides an example of a theory regarding the origin of water on Earth that was once popular, losing its credibility due to scientific knowledge and experience. Here is the first incorrect answer. For a scientific theory to be considered credible, it must be proven through scientific experiments conducted by scientists worldwide. So this answer option explains how theories become credible, but does not explain that some theories are not credible. The validity of many theories regarding the creation of water has been long debated. That's incorrect. The fact that the theory was long debated is not suggested as a cause for its loss of credibility in the field. Only those scientific theories published in official reports and articles are deemed credible by other scientists. This is incorrect. So although the passage mentions that the results of an experiment looking into the role that organic matter may have played in the formation of water were published in scientific reports, it doesn't suggest that for a scientific theory to be deemed credible, it must be published in official reports. Remember, you really have to use the evidence in the text to get the correct answer. All right, you've made it through this series of lessons about supporting details. Let's go ahead and just take a quick review. So remember that statements that are true about a text are supported by textual evidence. Statements that are untrue are not supported by textual evidence. And a supporting detail is a detail that helps develop a specific idea about a text. These can be things such as facts and statistics, examples, explanations, descriptions, or even comparisons. Thanks for hanging with me, guys. I will see you in the next lesson. Hey everyone, welcome to the context clue set of lessons that we have here for the HESI A2. By the end of this set of lessons, you will be able to identify the meaning of words using context. So you may be asking yourself, why do you need to know this skill? But throughout nursing school, you might be presented with things like complex reports, and they might contain words that are difficult for you to understand. In addition to directly asking for input and help, you might need to figure out the meaning of words and phrases through context. And that might be if your professor is speaking to you, if your colleagues or your peers, anyone really, you'll have to perhaps use context to define words. Also, you're going to be asked to do this in the HESI A2. So it's a fundamental skill for all areas of life. Let's go ahead and hop in. Okay, so here's our vocabulary for this skill. I always suggest that you pause here and take notes. I love to use flashcards. If you like to use them too, I suggest you create them and add these to your deck. So context is the text that surrounds a word or phrase, and it provides hints or clues about the meaning of an unknown word. The tone, and we'll go over this at length later, is how the author feels about the topic at hand and the mood they create for the reader. We need to know about tone to be able to identify context in certain situations. All right, so we also have quite a few key points here. These are key points that I really, really think that you should take notes on personally. Again, you can add these to a note card or a series of note cards, but let's go ahead and dive in. So there are different types of context clues that we're going to hit on throughout this lesson series. The first one is the definition. So sometimes a word is defined within a sentence or within a sentence nearby, and so then you can understand that word from just continuing reading. An example would be an example of a word that is given within the sentence or a sentence nearby. So if there's a difficult word and then there's a word in parentheses that gives an example of that word, that's also a context clue. Another type is a synonym. So sometimes a word is stated and then a synonym is stated after, and a synonym is just has the same meaning. Could be an easier word or something in layman's terms. On the flip side of that, an antonym might be stated, and so therefore the word in question would be clarified using an opposite definition or an antonym. Last but not least, we have inference. Okay, we have a whole lesson on making inferences, but context clues sometimes require inferences as well, so we're going to practice it here. Inferences are details in the text that, when combined with background knowledge, reveal the meaning of this word. Okay, now that we have vocab and key points, let's go ahead and dive right on into steps for determining context clues. So what I want you to think about first is, if you run into any sort of a word that you are unfamiliar with, you can always stop and think about the topic of the text. If you know the topic of the text, then you are on the right path to understanding the word using context. So after you've done that, it's really helpful for you to look around the word physically in the paragraph to see if there are any context clues available, because sometimes, again, there might be an example, there might be a definition, things like that. And then you can ask yourself these questions in order to get the correct definition. So, are there clues inside of the sentence that reveal its meaning? Are there clues in a nearby sentence that reveal its meaning? And or does this definition of the word make sense given the topic, purpose, and tone? So this last question that you'd be asking yourself is perhaps after you've found the answer or after you've taken a guess at what the word means. You ask yourself, does it make sense? You can maybe plug it back into the sentence. Think about these things. So I want to refer back to our first set of lessons in this series. Those were about main idea. All of the information I just presented you with, this key points, vocab, questions you can ask yourself, these all link back to main idea. So if you can identify the topic, which is a huge part of main idea, you can have a better understanding of what the text is about and therefore apply it to context clues and understand what the word in question might mean. Okay, so now you have a bunch of notes. What we're going to do is dive into an example of each type of context clue that you took notes on. So let's start with definition. So again, this is when the word is defined in a sentence nearby or in the sentence in question. So if you're asked what the word conduit might mean, let's go ahead and see if we can find it. The conduit, a person who links two things together, suggested that we discuss our merger over Zoom. Okay, so the word we want to concentrate on is presented in bold here. Again, conduit. Let's look for the definition. Keep in mind that this has a pretty neutral tone. So as you can see highlighted on your screen, the phrase, a person who links two things together, is the definition of conduit. If you type that into Google right now or go grab your dictionary and look it up, you'll see that this is true. And it makes sense in context because it's someone who's linking two things together. It's linking this potential company or person together because they're discussing a merger or coming together over Zoom. All right, let's look at the next example, which happens to be example. Remember, this is an example of the word that might be given within the sentence or sentence nearby. So here we see the word malicious is bolded. Let's try to define it using examples that we see in the sentence. Heather's actions were malicious in that she keyed Bobby's car and let out all the air from his tires. Bobby, what did you do? All right. this has a negative tone, y'all. And so if Heather's actions are malicious, it's probably something that's not good. Okay, as you can see highlighted on your screen, she keyed Bobby's car, which means you literally take a key to the paint and like scrape all over it, which is not great. And let out all the air from his tires. Can't drive, there's no air in your tires, right? That's not cool. It's not good. So these examples of Heather's behavior are aggressive and cruel, destructive. These are also examples of the definition of the word malicious. As you can see, the examples of her keying the car and letting all the air out of the tires got us to that definition of the word malicious as being cruel and destructive. Okay, so what we're looking for next in context clues are synonyms. So these are words in the sentence or sentence nearby that have similar meanings. Okay, so I see the word candor is called out for us in bold here. So we're going to try and define the word candor using synonyms. Jesse is an honest boss in that he always provides truthful feedback and his employees appreciate his candor. Okay, so candor seems to be something that is positive because his employees are appreciating it, they're liking it. So this tone is like kind of uplifting. Now, as you can see highlighted on your screen, there are two words, honest and truthful. This is his candor. These words directly relate to that word and they actually mean the exact same thing. Candor is like being open or sincere, and these are synonyms of the word in the sentence. All right, opposite of synonyms, now we're going to look at antonyms. These are words that are clarified by giving the opposite meaning or a non-example of the word in question. Okay, so Anna is self-effacing, while Joe is conceited in his character. So the tone of the sentence is two-sided because it seems like these two people are different. That word while shows us that these two people are different. So one person is conceited and the other self-effacing. Here the word while signifies a difference. So the adjective describing Joe, which is conceited, must be the antonym of the word in question. Being conceited is usually a negative thing, so I think that the word in question, self-effacing, will then be a positive word since we're looking for an antonym anyways. Okay, so again, Joe, conceited. Anna, self-effacing. The opposite of conceited is being humble or modest. So I can then guess correctly that the term self-effacing means humble or modest. All right, let's take a look at inference context clues now. These are details in the text that when combined with background knowledge reveal the meaning of a word. So here is our sentence. The new democratic reforms directly impacted the king's autocratic rule. Okay, so these are a little bit harder. You're going to have to make an inference or an educated guess as to what the definition of the word autocratic means. You can pull from your prior knowledge here about root words, prefixes, affixes, and couple that with your knowledge of context if you want. So I know that democratic means that the power rests in the people. I know that reform means changes. And if these changes impact a king whose rule alone is not based on what the people want, I can infer that the type of rule that this king has is one where one person is in power. So, another reason why I think that this word means sole ruler is because it seems like these democratic reforms are different from the normal of this king. And if there's a democracy, it's opposite of a monarchy or an autocratic rule, which is a sole ruler. Okay, welcome to lesson 2. We are going to be working through some guided practice here with context clues. But before we jump in, I'd love to remind you of the types of context clues that we are working with today. As you can see on your screen, these are definition, example, synonym, antonym, and inference. So go ahead and take a minute, pause this, refresh your memory as to what these mean if you'd like. And if not, you can keep this played and roll along with me. We're going to dive right into examples here. So this first example has a bolded word in the sentence, but we're going to pause and we're going to take a step back. Let's read the question first, all right? The question reads, which of the following is a synonym for the word superfluous as used in the sentence? Remember, synonym means similar meaning or same. Now let's go read the sentence. Now we know what we're looking for. We're looking for a synonym. The superfluous water overwhelming the New Orleans canals is drained off into nearby lakes. So I want you to think about the context of this sentence first. Don't worry about the answer choices. You don't see them anyways. You'll need a synonym or a word that means the same thing for superfluous. So go ahead and use your background knowledge and the context of this sentence to help you. I want you to pause here and try and think of a synonym. Remember, this water is overwhelming the New Orleans canals and is drained off into nearby lakes. Okay, so now on your screen, what you see is the question with the multiple choice options. So now that you potentially have your synonym in mind, I want you to think if it matches up with any of these answer choices. So do we think it means minuscule, amount, excessive, or fluid? All right, if you chose C, excessive, you got this answer correct. So this water is overwhelming the New Orleans canals and has to be drained off. So there's too much of it and needs to go. It's excessive. Minuscule for A, y'all, means a small amount. And if some water or a small amount of water needs to be drained off, it's probably not a large amount. So this is incorrect. B, the word amount doesn't fit in context here. We are looking for an adjective and the word amount is a noun. So if you were to plug this back in, it wouldn't make any sense. D, fluid means free flowing. So all water is fluid. It doesn't make sense to be able to drain off only fluid water from a canal. Okay, so I know that was super short practice, but this is an example of one type of question that you will see on the HESI A2 concerning context clues. What we're going to do next is dive into independent practice. I will see you there. All right, y'all, here is lesson 3 in our context clues lessons series. What we are going to be doing right now is some independent practice. And before we start, as usual, I would love to remind you of our key points and information pertaining to this skill. So you can go ahead and pause here and read through if you want. We are looking for context clues that have to pertain with definition, example, synonym, antonyms, and inferences. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to look at a multiple choice question. Start by reading the question, as always. Then read the paragraph and take a look at the answer options. Try your best. I will review the answer with you coming up soon. Press pause now, play when you're ready to move forward. Okay, so in this paragraph, we actually see the word depiction twice. We see depictions and then depiction. You probably won't see that like that on the HESI. I just wanted to give you an example of it here to show you 2 ways of how this answer is going to be correct. So we see the word draw and drew highlighted on your screen for you. So the correct answer is drawings, B. If you are doing a depiction of a scientist or depictions of lab coats, glasses, and things like that, these are things that you can see, and they are potentially drawings. So A is incorrect because scenes doesn't make sense in context. A depiction of a scientist, which is a person, is not scenery. C is also incorrect. Bodies doesn't make sense in context. If you plug it in, varied bodies of lab coats, that doesn't make sense. All right, D is also incorrect. Colors. It is clearly stated that the children were asked to draw the scientists, y'all, and they produced various depictions of lab coats, glasses, etc., but there's no mention of color. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at another example here. Again, start by reading the question, dive into the paragraph, and try and answer the multiple choice question to the best of your ability. And I will be waiting for you on the other side for an explanation. Okay, so here we see the word diminished in the middle of the paragraph. And then surrounding the word, I see or increased. So if gender stereotypes have diminished or increased with time, and then oscillations and shifts in thinking. So the word oscillation and shift mean kind of similar things in that it's changing, it's not steady. So if we're thinking about this in context, through a comparison of older studies and more recent experiments, scientists are hoping to discover if gender stereotypes have diminished or increased. So we're looking, increased is an antonym for the word diminished. So we're looking for something that means the opposite. The word lessened, C, is the best answer. For answer option A, mirrored can mean to mean the same thing or be similar. Like you're looking into a mirror, you're seeing yourself. The paragraph states that we're looking for a comparison. So we're looking to see the similarities and differences. So we need an opposite word of increased, which is not mirrored. All right, B is also incorrect. Expanded is similar to increased, y'all. So if you chose this is the good answer, not the best one. But remember, we're looking to compare the two. So we need an antonym for increased. All right, D, mistaken doesn't really make sense in context. Remember, we're looking to compare two things. All right, if you were to plug that in context, it wouldn't make sense. All righty, so we have another example here. What you're going to do is start by reading the question, then going through the paragraph and try and answer. Good luck. Okay, so here I have highlighted a few things for you on your screen. If you chose C, contrasting, you got the correct answer here for contradictory. So we see 70% of girls drew female scientists. However, which is like a signal word for okay, on the other hand, the age of 16, around 75% provided drawings of male. Okay, so that something changed. In context, a parallel trend would be trends that are along the same lines, and perhaps they show the same data points and trends in the same direction. The paragraph describes different patterns. Additionally, there is no main trend here, so B can't be correct. There are two significant trends being described. Disheartening means disappointing, and this doesn't really describe anything disappointing. The tone here is just kind of, giving you some information. It's kind of neutral. So scientific data is not really tied to emotions, usually. So disheartening is not correct. Okay, we've come to our final example here. Again, start by reading the question and then the paragraph and try and get the correct answer. Good luck. All right, if you chose A, imagine, then you got this correct. I've highlighted a word on your screen that says believe. So this first sentence reads, a large amount of sociologists believe that children reflect ideas that are exposed to in their familial units and larger society. And critics down here with the word posit. Critics posit that children will not be as influenced as you might think. These two words are kind of linked here. You had to make an inference to get this correct. But the word posit most aligns with the word imagine. So if you replace the word imagine in this sentence, it makes sense. So critics imagine that children will not be as influenced as one might think. Boom, makes sense. Loathe means to hate, and it doesn't make sense in context. They don't hate this idea. Additionally, there's nothing that critics are remembering here. This is an assumption that they're making about the data at hand. And finally, y'all, there's nothing that scientists or the author in this paragraph are protesting or objecting to. All right, you've made it all the way through this context clues series. Thank you so much for hanging with me. This is just a final wrap up for you to review. This is how you would identify context clues. Start by reading the question, think about the topic, ask yourself if there's any words within the sentence that you see that might define it. Move on to nearby sentences, and then plug it in, think about the topic, purpose, and tone. I will see you in the next lesson series. Thank you so much for hanging out. Bye. Hey everyone, welcome to the Author's Purpose lesson in the HESI A2 prep course. What I want to start with today is giving you information about what you will be able to master by the end of this skill. So you're going to be able to identify the author's purpose of an overall passage, and you'll be able to identify the author's purpose for including specific details or information, or why they structure a certain paragraph in a certain way. So you may be asking yourself why you are needing to learn this skill for the HESI A2. Here is my quick take. Throughout nursing school, you will need to understand why other medical professionals have included specific information in patient reports. Additionally, you can use this skill to make logical inferences about medical reports. Okay, so if you're a note taker, I highly suggest that you pause here and take notes, or take notes while I am walking you through this vocab. Our first vocab word is author's purpose. Author's purpose is the author's reason or intent for writing. Persuade means to convince the reader to think or act in a certain way. Inform is to provide the reader with information about a topic. And entertain is to hold the reader's attention through enjoyment or to elicit an emotional response from the reader. Okay, so here's our first piece of key points. So an author's purpose is why the author writes a text, right? So there are these 3 reasons why, and they align with this acronym PIE. So persuade, inform, or entertain. An author's overall purpose impacts the choices that they make in their writing, such as information that they choose to include and how they choose to structure their writing. A persuasive text is going to be structured differently than an entertaining text or an informative text. Okay, so here is my first quick tip for you. You really are going to want to try and pay attention to the words or phrases that an author uses, so that you can figure out why the author is writing the text or what piece of the pie this text falls under. There's a chart on your screen for you here. Each column has words or phrases that align with the purpose. So the first is persuade. The author might use words like I think, I feel, or I believe, in my opinion, good, better, best, things like that. An informative text is going to likely use objective language like, for example, this source explains, according to data. And an entertaining text might use things like figurative language, similes, humor, sarcasm, things like that. Okay, so there are additional verbs that you can really be on the lookout for to describe why authors write. And again, you see a chart on your screen. It starts with persuade, then inform, then entertain. So go ahead and take a second to read through each list so that you know which words to pay attention to identify author's purpose. Okay, so when you are identifying author's purpose, I want you to pay attention to a few things. I want you to think about what is the author's topic or main idea. Then I want you to think, is this a persuasive text, informative, or is it entertaining? And then lastly, what specifically does the author want to persuade, inform, or entertain me about? So when you're identifying author's purpose for including specific information or structuring information in the text in a certain way, you can ask yourself the following. How does this specific phrase or sentence or detail that the question is asking about help the author say or do what the purpose is? How does the phrase, sentence, or detail connect to the author's overall purpose? And why did the author decide to include this specific phrase, sentence, or detail? As you can see, we just ran down a couple of different versions of author's purpose. You might be asked on the HESI about what's the purpose of this text. You might also be asked, why did the author include this specific detail? So we're going to run through a couple examples before we dive into guided and independent practice. Let's go ahead and start here by reading the question. What is a potential reason why the author includes the detail? Recent archaeological findings have brought one previously undiscovered detail to light in the paragraph. So we're looking for that detail as we read, and we need to understand why it's there. So this is one type of question that you might see aligned with this skill, asking you about one specific detail in the text. What we're going to do next is I'm going to read through this passage, and then we're going to tackle the answer options. When Norman troops conquered England in 1066, the victory influenced the political sphere in Europe for decades afterwards. Although the major political decisions may not have directly impacted English citizens at the time, recent archaeological findings have brought one previously undiscovered detail to light. There's that piece from the question. Based on this evidence, archaeologists believe that the Norman conquest drastically changed the typical diet that was prevalent in England before the occupation of Normandy. So, let's go ahead and take a minute here to pause and read through these answer options before we dive into the correct answer. Remember, you're thinking, why is that detail there? First, start by looking at the detail. Think about what the purpose of the text is and why that detail is inserted there. All right, so here's our correct answer. To spark the reader's interest in new historical findings. The author uses words like recent and previously undiscovered to describe these findings and to really grab the reader's attention and heighten their curiosity about the findings so that they will continue to read. Here's our first two incorrect answer options. To suggest a reason as to why the findings were unknown for so long. The author describes that the findings are previously undiscovered, but there's no mention anywhere in the passage about why they remained unknown for so long, so this is incorrect. To give the reader a sense of when the findings occurred. So although the author does state that the findings are recent, there's really no additional information that clarifies when they occurred. Here's our last incorrect answer option. To provide information about the Norman victory over England. So in this paragraph, there is some really basic information about the Norman victory over England, but it isn't directly connected to the author's word choice in the detail that this question is calling out. Okay, so here's the second type of question that you might see on the HESI A2. It asks you about the purpose of the paragraph as a whole. So let's go ahead and start by reading the question, the paragraph, and then we will run through the answers. What is the main purpose of the paragraph? Remember, we're going to think if it's persuade, inform, or entertain, and go from there. With the help of anthropologists and leading experts in the archaeology field, significant findings were exposed. A leading team of researchers was able to study bone teeth and bone fragments of nearly 40 people who lived between 900 and 1300 AD. This time frame was chosen to accurately compare the periods before, during, and after the Norman conquest in the early 1000s. According to medical research and historical evidence, An analysis of these human remains would clearly depict not only what these individuals ate, but how war and conquest impacted their nutrition of it all. I want you to go ahead and look through the answer choices and see if you can eliminate anything before we go to our correct answer. All right, so thinking about what the purpose overall of this text is, the correct answer is to establish the credibility of the research methods used. The paragraph provides information about who was doing the research, the artifacts they used during the study, and why they chose to use the artifacts that they did. The intent of including this information is to show the reader that the study findings are trustworthy. Okay, so here is your first incorrect answer. To introduce the team of scientists conducting the research. So the author does mention that a team of researchers was made up of anthropologists and other experts, but it doesn't mention any specifics about these scientists. This is not the purpose of the paragraph as a whole. It's more like a supporting detail. Here's our next incorrect answer option. To explain how the researchers arrived at their findings. This paragraph does not explain how they arrived at their findings. All right, last but not least, here's our last incorrect answer option. To highlight the importance of the study and its findings. This paragraph doesn't discuss anything about the importance of the study itself. All right, guys, head over to lesson 2 where we will do a little bit more practice with questions pertaining to author's purpose. I'll see you there. All right, before we dive into practice, this is lesson 2 of author's purpose. What we're going to do is run down the vocabulary one more time so that you can really remind yourself what pertains to author's purpose. So author's purpose is the intent or the reason why the author writes. There are 3 different purposes that we are using for the sake of this lesson that you can transfer for your HESI. These are persuade, inform, and entertain. If an author is persuading you of something, they're trying to convince you. If they're informing you, they're really just giving you information about a topic. It's usually very objective. If they're entertaining you, they want to give you some enjoyment or elicit some type of emotion for you. All right, so here is our first question. I want you to go ahead and read through the question. Why does the author include the findings of the isotopic analysis done on kitchen utensils in this paragraph? So you're looking for that detail about the findings of the isotopic analysis done on kitchen utensils. I want you to read the paragraph and attempt to answer this question. I will run down the correct answer with you when you're done. Okay, so our correct answer here is to provide scientific evidence supporting the English eating specific meats. So, the results of this analysis are used by researchers to conclude that the English began eating more pork due to Norman rule, since the fatty acids from pork were found more often after Normandy conquered England. Here's our first incorrect answer option. To discuss in detail an additional step of the research process and findings. So although the author mentions the findings of this isotopic analysis, they don't provide a detailed account of how this was done. Therefore, this cannot be the reason for the author to include the study's findings. Here's our next incorrect answer option. To support the idea that some meats are fattier than others. The isotopic analysis was not done to prove that some meats are fattier than others. Even though the results found fatty acids on kitchen utensils, the findings of fatty acids led to the researchers' conclusions that the English people ate more pork and chicken after the Norman rule. All right, here's our last incorrect answer option. To contrast the Normans' eating habits before and after their conquest of England. So the overall purpose of this passage is to explain how Norman rule in England impacted the eating habits of English, not the Normans. The isotopic analysis found fatty acids in scraps from English kitchens, which revealed a change in English, not Norman, eating habits. So this one was really tricky. You had to really pay attention to the details. All right, here's our next example. What is the main purpose of the paragraph? So you need to think, is it to persuade, inform, entertain, and then go from there? Read this paragraph, think about the main purpose, and then answer the question. I'll review the correct answer with you when you're done. All right, so the correct answer here is to introduce solar power as a possible means of communication. This paragraph refers to everyday items that currently run on solar power. These details reveal that the purpose of this paragraph is to introduce the reader to the idea that communication is a feasible next step in solar power advancement. All right, here's our first incorrect answer. To emphasize the fact that sunlight is a renewable source of energy. So although this second sentence here does state that sunlight is a renewable source of energy, it's not the main purpose of the paragraph. To highlight household items that can be powered using sunlight. The author does mention 2 household items that can currently be powered by solar energy, but this isn't the main purpose of the paragraph as a whole. All right, here's your last incorrect answer explanation. To explain the complicated process of turning sunlight into energy. Not only is this statement inaccurate, as a sentence in the paragraph refers to the process as easily convertible, it's also not the main purpose of the paragraph. All right, flip over to lesson 3 next, where we'll do some independent practice questions. I will see you there. Okay, welcome everybody to the third lesson in our Author's Purpose series. The first thing I want you to do is take a moment to pause this video, review the key vocab associated with this skill. Press play when you're ready to jump into some independent practice questions with me. All right, so this is independent practice. What I want you to do, start by reading that question, read through the paragraph, and try and answer it. Press pause, press play when you're ready to move forward. All right, to support the idea that sending data through solar power may be safer than current methods is correct. So the details referenced in the question support the idea that hackers may not be able to steal data when using solar-powered communications methods. So this answer is correct. Here's our first incorrect answer. To suggest an easy way that people can use to protect their current online data from hackers. So although this sentence suggests a simple way to protect data from online hackers, this is about data that is transferred using solar power, not current online data. That was a little tricky. All right, here are our last 2 incorrect answer options. The first one is to argue that solar-powered communication will transform how we use the internet. So, although the paragraph mentions that solar power could revolutionize how people use online services, it's not the reason why the author includes the detail referenced in the question about confining oneself to an enclosed area while sharing data. To inform the reader about ongoing solar power experiments is also incorrect. Although the detail mentioned in the question is a conclusion drawn from experiments, informing readers about the ongoing experiments with solar power is not why the author includes this detail. Okay, here is our next and our last question for you. What I want you to do is go ahead and start by reading the question, read through the paragraph, and then attempt to answer the question. I will be here for you when you're ready to review the answers. Okay, to emphasize the impact that solar-powered communication may have on our future is correct. So by ending the passage with this sentence, the author focuses the reader's attention on how significant solar-powered communication will be and if and when it will become a reality. This idea is supported throughout the passage as the author discusses the numerous benefits that solar-powered communication may have. Here's our first incorrect answer explanation. To encourage the reader to support research in solar-powered communication. So although this last sentence could indirectly encourage a reader to support research in solar-powered communication, it's not the best answer option as to why the author would include this last sentence. The author doesn't directly address the reader or use any type of persuasive language aimed towards bringing about a belief or an action in the reader. All right, here's our next incorrect answer option. To inform the reader about additional experiments focused on the sun's rays. So although additional experiments are mentioned in this paragraph, they are not discussed in that final sentence. Therefore, this is not the reason that the author includes that last sentence. All right, last but not least here, to offer a contradictory opinion regarding solar-powered communication. This is incorrect. The final sentence does not provide an opinion that is contradictory to that of the author. The opinion shared in the last sentence aligns with the author's overall purpose and ideas in the passage regarding the possibilities of solar-powered communication. All right, you've made it through this lesson series about author's purpose. Let's take a quick glance at these key points just to refresh your memory and wrap up our lesson. The author's purpose is the reason why an author writes a text. This could be to persuade, inform, or entertain. An author's overall purpose impacts the choices they make when writing, such as the information they choose to include and or how they choose to structure their writing. Thank you so much for hanging with me. I will see you in the next lesson. Have a great day. Hey everyone, welcome to lesson 1 in the point of view series for the HESI A2. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify the author's point of view of a specific text. So as a nurse, you're going to need to gather information from various sources throughout your career, and that could be from colleagues or peers, or it could be from academic journals, things like that. Identifying their point of view is really, really key for you. You need to be able to do this to be able to make inferences about what's happening around you or what's happening in a report, things like that. Let's go ahead and get started with our vocabulary now. So I always urge our learners in this portion of the lesson to take some notes here. Maybe you are taking notes on your computer. Maybe you are making flashcards. Any way you see fit, let's go ahead and dive in. Point of view is how the author feels about the topic that they're writing about. This is the author's opinion or their personal belief about the topic. The tone is the author's attitude, and this could be positive, negative, or neutral. And this is the attitude towards the subject. Now, an inference is an implied idea formed by combining textual evidence and background knowledge and reasoning. Okay, next let's go ahead and take a look at these key points. An author's point of view, again, is their opinion. So it's how they feel about what's happening. We can infer author's point of view based on their word choice, tone, and choices about which details they choose to emphasize or leave out in a text. So here I've highlighted 3 key steps that you can use when trying to identify author's point of view. You can ask yourself the following questions. What is the topic that the author is writing about? And if you need more practice with topic, go ahead and flip back to that main idea lesson. I cover it in length. The second question you can ask yourself is, how does the author feel about the topic? And the third question is, what inferences can you make about that text after identifying the author's point of view? Okay, so here we have an example. This passage is titled Body Equality. What I'm going to do is read through this paragraph with you, and then we're going to break down the author's point of view together without any multiple choice. Let's get started. Body equality. The body equality movement has recently become popular in the United States. The movement promotes the idea that all bodies are beautiful, no matter their shape or their size. This inclusivity is a welcome change from diet culture and traditional beliefs about how one's thinnest body is the best body. Diet culture not only exacerbates stress, anxiety, and depression, but can also promote unhealthy eating habits. The body equality movement, however, encourages the love and self-acceptance that people need today. So let's go ahead and start with this topic here. As you can see highlighted on your screen, the topic is the body equality movement. We see that in both the title and in the very first part of the first sentence. Now we need to ask ourselves, how does this author feel about the topic? How do they feel about body equality? What's their point of view? So let's go ahead and take a look at the author's word choice in order to identify their point of view about this topic. I've highlighted a few things on your screen, such as all bodies are beautiful, inclusivity, love, and self-acceptance. I'm concluding here, I'm making an inference that this tone is supportive. This author is coming off as supportive of this movement. All of these words that I've highlighted on your screen are positive, and therefore I can infer that the author has a positive and supportive tone. The author is passionate about this topic. Okay, now that we have the tone of this piece of writing as supportive of the body equality movement, what we're going to do next is look at the author's point of view. What is the point of view? So it's going to be something that has to align with a positive, supportive tone. So let's go ahead and see. The new piece that I've highlighted for you on your screen is the 3 words, people need today. So if you need this today, it's probably pretty important. So the author is emphasizing that this body equality movement is important and that they support it. Therefore, the point of view that I can conclude here, that I can infer, is the body equality movement is important and positive for people. Let's go ahead and take a look at example 2 now. The last example that I gave you, we were just looking at identifying the author's point of view independently. This one has a specific question aligned with it, so we're going to start by reading the question, as you always should do. So, which of the following best describes the author's point of view regarding today's global economy? So, this is asking you to zoom in on a topic, the global economy, and how the author feels about that topic. Let's go ahead and read this paragraph. The global economy. Where would the global economy be without the feasibility of global commerce? While current technology allows us to purchase something from the other side of the world in a blink of an eye, our ancestors were required to travel long journeys across the large expanse of ocean water just to negotiate and possibly make a successful trade. When it comes to the origins of global trade, marine archaeologists have devoted decades of study in the hopes of understanding the most common naval routes of early civilizations. With a new discovery found deep in the Mediterranean Sea, they have uncovered new details surrounding ancient trade methods that continue to impact cultures to this day. So this is one type of multiple choice question that you might see about point of view, and it's asking you the point of view regarding something very specific within the paragraph. So I want you to start by thinking about how you would describe how the author feels about global economy. So what word would you use to describe their point of view if you had to in one word? After you've done that, what you can do is look at multiple choice options and see if it aligns with whatever word you came up with and go from there. So let's go ahead and take a look at this paragraph broken down a little bit more. I'm going to zoom in on the word choice here so that we can really understand the tone and the point of view of the author. So I see the word allows, devoted, hopes, understanding, and impact. Remember, authors use specific words for specific reasons. Here, I've picked out the words that stand out to me, and these words help convey the author's tone. Overall, I think that the author is passionate about this topic and understands that the past influences the future. So let's go ahead and take a look at the multiple choice and see if we can find an answer choice that matches that idea about being super passionate and how the past influences the future. Now what you're looking at are the multiple choice answer options associated with this passage. We broke down the word choice and decided on the topic and the tone, and therefore concluded the point of view. What I want you to do is pause here and try and think, what is the correct answer that aligns best with what we came up with? Okay, so if you picked ancient trade methods and routes have had an important and lasting impact on today's global economy, you got this answer correct. Congratulations. On your screen, what you can see is the last sentence is also highlighted here. This is how the author feels about global economy. All right, here's our first incorrect answer explanation. Today's global economy would be more successful if it utilized the trading methods and routes of ancient civilizations. So the author does discuss the trading methods and the routes of ancient civilizations, but there's no evidence in this passage to support the idea that the author believes that we should use those same methods today. This answer is incorrect. Here's the next incorrect answer. It is much more difficult for people today to participate in the global economy than for people living in ancient civilizations. This is a completely inaccurate interpretation of the passage. The details provided by the author show that the opposite is true. In fact, they say that in the blink of an eye, we can order things from across the world. And while global purchases in the past required long, dangerous journeys, and it wasn't always successful. Here's our final incorrect answer. Researching the origins of global trade is a waste of time and effort since ancient commerce has little to do with today's global economy. So, if you remember back to the beginning of this passage, we decided that the author was passionate about this subject, the global economy. This statement here completely contradicts the information that we highlighted at the very beginning of this lesson about how the author is passionate about this topic and thinks that global economy is influenced by the past. All right, it's time to practice, you guys. Go ahead and head over to lesson 2. I will see you there where we will take you through some guided practice. Bye. Hey everyone, welcome to lesson 2 in the point of view series for the HESI A2. I'm just going to take you through a very quick reminder of our key points that we highlighted in lesson 1. So the author's point of view is their opinion or feeling or personal belief about the topic. We can infer an author's point of view based on their word choice, tone, and choices about the details that they choose to emphasize or leave out. Okay, as promised, you're going to dive into some practice here. I read through the paragraph in the first lesson with you. On the HESI, obviously, no one's going to be able to do that for you. So we are going to have you read the passage independently and try and get the answer. I want you to pause the video, read through the thing about spiders, answer the question, and then join me when you're ready to move forward. Okay, if you chose that the banana spider is intriguing, you got this correct. The author uses words like fascinating, impressively, and amazing throughout this paragraph to describe these spiders, and so therefore they're probably pretty intriguing to the author or interesting. Here's our first incorrect answer explanation. Spiders are disgusting creatures. It's just incorrect, y'all. The author mentions that some people think that spiders are creepy and repulsive once in the paragraph, but then throughout the paragraph, they use positive words to describe spiders and think that they're intriguing. So this answer is incorrect. Here's our next incorrect answer. The banana spider is mysterious. So the concluding sentence that's highlighted on your screen now does refer to ongoing research, but the paragraph doesn't support that this spider is mysterious or puzzling to any of the scientists. It's incorrect. Okay, here's our last incorrect answer. Spiders' webs are strong and sleek. So, according to this passage, this is true, but it's not the best answer here. This is because the passage is not about spiders' webs. It's more about the banana spider overall. If you chose this answer, you may have gotten tripped up, but you have to think about the passage as a whole here and not just a supporting detail like this one. Okay, so here is our second example. It's called Our Oceans. Start by reading that question, then dive into the paragraph and the answer options. And you can press pause here, press play when you're ready to go over the answers. All right, so here is our correct answer. If you chose, climate change is at least partially responsible for the increasing deoxygenation of Earth's oceans. Okay, so the sentences that are highlighted on your screen provide expert opinions regarding climate change's role in the problem of oxygen loss in Earth's oceans. The fact that the author chooses to include these details and makes no mention of contradictory ideas reveals that they agree with these statements. All right, so here's our first incorrect answer. There is not enough scientific evidence to support the idea that humans are responsible for climate change on Earth. There's no evidence in this passage to support this, y'all. The paragraph doesn't reference humans. Instead, the author identifies the rise in Earth's temperature as a cause of the loss of oxygen in Earth's ocean. There's nothing that has to do with humans specifically here, so we can't make this jump. All right, here's our next incorrect answer. The global community is unaware of climate change and the many problems it can cause. So the author doesn't claim that the global economy is unaware of climate change, but that the global economy is not paying enough attention to the crisis of oxygen lost in Earth's oceans. So we can't say that they're unaware when the author simply says that people are just not paying enough attention. All right, so here's our final incorrect answer. There is no connection between climate change and the deoxygenation of Earth's oceans is incorrect. So this is the opposite of the author's opinion regarding climate change. The details provided in the passage strongly suggest that the author believes in a connection between climate change and the oxygen lost in the Earth's oceans. And I have highlighted a sentence for you here that helps prove that statement. Okay, everyone, it's time for independent practice. So go over to lesson 3. I will see you there and we will give you a couple of more questions. Okay, welcome to lesson 3 in the Point of View lesson series for the HESI A2. As usual, I am just going to review the key points with you about this skill to refresh your memory. So here we go. The author's point of view is their opinion, feeling, or personal belief concerning the topic that they're writing about. We can infer an author's point of view based on their word choice, tone, and what choices they make as to what they add to the paragraph or leave out. Okay, so this next paragraph is your first practice question. What I would like you to do is start by reading the question, then dive into the paragraph and the answer options. I highly suggest you pause here, actually do the practice, and then press play when you're ready to hear my answer explanations. Good luck. Okay, so here's our correct answer explanation. Our question was, which of the following statements would the author most likely agree with? So here's the correct answer. Seemingly small environmental changes can have unexpected consequences on the Earth's ecosystem. So the sentences that I have highlighted for you on your screen illustrate how the interconnectedness of Earth's ecosystems means that a change in one system will have a ripple effect on the others. Okay, here's our first incorrect answer explanation. It is impossible to unify the global economy behind the same cause, regardless of its importance. So this is just an inaccurate interpretation of the passage. The author does state that it's nearly impossible to unify the international community behind a cause that has received little attention. Nothing in the passage indicates that the author believes that it's impossible to unify the global economy behind any important cause. So if you chose this, you may have thought that it was being more specific, but this answer choice is actually very general and therefore is not correct. All right, let's take a look at the next incorrect answer option. It's too late to take any meaningful steps to decrease the deoxygenation rate in Earth's oceans. The author explains that people must pay attention to this issue because it's important. There's no mention of it being too late to address this issue. This answer is incorrect. All right, here's our final incorrect answer explanation. Marine plants and animals will adapt to lower oxygen levels in the oceans to survive. Nothing in this passage, you guys, indicates that the author would agree with this statement. No mention is made of plants and animals adapting to lower oxygen levels. Rather, the passage focuses on the negative consequences of deoxygenating Earth's oceans for underwater ecosystems. Okay, so here's our next independent practice question. Again, start by reading the question, then dive into the paragraph and the answer options. Press pause now and press play when you're ready to move forward. Okay, so here's our correct answer explanation. I'm going to start just by reviewing the question one time. The question reads, which of the following best expresses the author's point of view regarding oxygen loss in oceans? So we really had to zoom in on that topic regarding oxygen loss in oceans. Here's the correct answer. Over time, the ocean will continue to deoxygenate at an alarming rate, which will be disastrous for Earth. So this sentence conveys the author's point of view regarding what will happen when we have oceans without oxygen, and the information I've highlighted for you on your screen supports that. The gradual deoxygenation of oceans over time is normal, so there's no need to be overly concerned at this time. On your screen, guys, you see all of these words highlighted: catastrophic, difficulty, serious, irreversible damage, disasters. Nothing in this paragraph supports the idea that this drop is normal or that the author seems like, oh, it's cool, we don't need to be concerned. It's actually the opposite. Here is our next incorrect answer explanation. Recent studies have proven that Earth's oceans are losing oxygen, and there's no evidence that this can change. So, as you can see on your screen, the author provides evidence from studies and expert opinions to support the idea that humans can do things to help. And these are things like reducing pollution and lowering emissions on a global scale. Here's our next incorrect answer option. In order to take preventative measures, more research about deoxygenation must take place. So the author references continued research in this paragraph and explains solutions that experts agree will help. There's no mention of the idea that more research needs to be done before prevention techniques are implemented. All right, you made it to the very end of the point of view lesson, y'all. Here is your review real quick. An author's point of view is their opinion, feeling, or personal belief about that topic. We can infer the author's point of view by looking at their word choice and their tone and what they choose to add into the paragraph and what they choose to omit. In order to identify point of view, you can ask yourself, what is the topic? And then ask yourself, how does the author feel about it? I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I will see you in the next one in our series. Have a really great day. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the Fact and Opinion lesson series here for the HESI A2 entrance exam. As usual, I am Nicole, your course instructor. What we are going to be able to do by the end of this series of lessons is correctly identify an author's opinion and be able to distinguish between fact and opinion in a paragraph or in a passage. So here's a little bit of background information about why you need to look at this skill very closely. So throughout nursing school, you will need to understand the difference between fact and opinion. In life in general, you need to be able to do that. Is the information you're reading or hearing based on scientific data, or is it just word of mouth? This lesson is really going to help you understand the difference between the two, and it will help you in your nursing career. Okay, so here is some vocabulary for you. I suggest you pause and take notes as you see fit. But a fact is a statement that can be proven true or false. So facts are certainties and can be proved, observed, measured, however they can be proved. And an opinion is a statement that expresses personal belief, or it's a judgment. And opinions are not founded on proof or any sort of data to back them up. They can be disputed. Okay, so here are some key points about facts for you. Statements that are based on facts can be verified by data, statistics, and maybe even quotes from experts in the field. So what you're going to do is ask yourself, can this statement be proven to be true? If it's asking if this statement is a fact. So here are some things to look for when you're looking for facts. You can look for numbers or statistics, documents, photographs, or eyewitness accounts. You can look for words like verified or substantiate, corroborate, record, or prove. All of these things align with facts. Okay, so here's some key points for you to remember about opinions. Again, I suggest you take notes here if that is how you learn best. Totally up to you. Statements that are based on opinions emphasize the feelings and beliefs of the author. And you can ask yourself, can this statement be expressed as a feeling or a personal belief, or is it just perhaps the author's point of view? So you can look for words like think, believe, feel, good or bad, best or worst, always, never, and should. These words usually signify that there is an opinion in the statement at hand. Okay, so here are some steps to identifying facts and opinions for you. You can ask yourself, is this detail supported by evidence or by data? And if it is, then it's a fact. Is this detail based on a personal belief or a judgment? And if it is, then it's an opinion. All right, so here's a quick, simple example for you. I want you to think which statement is a fact and which one is an opinion, and think about why. In 2021, the Milwaukee Bucks held the title for the NBA Finals. The Houston Rockets are the best team in the NBA. Even if you don't know or aren't familiar with the NBA or these teams in general, you can decide which one of these is an opinion based on the word choice of the author. Here, this first statement is a fact. You can literally look this information up and prove it to be true. There's a date associated here. You can look up who won the title for the NBA Finals in 2021. So the word best in the second statement signifies an opinion, because not everyone thinks that the Houston Rockets are the best team in the NBA. It's a personal viewpoint. That word best signifies an opinion. Okay, so let's dive into an example that's a little bit more lengthy. What we're going to do is start by reading our question. So our question is, which supporting detail is an example of a fact? So what we're going to do is read through this paragraph. We're going to think about which details are facts, which details are opinions, and then we're going to dive right into those answer options. So this is titled Defending Bats. Bats, the infamously tiny creatures typically associated with vampires and Halloween candy, have a rich history that is not known by the average person. These days, most people would likely prefer to stay away from these flying mammals based on their reputations for carrying an array of diseases and are generally regarded as dangerous. In reality, bats rid the ecosystem of insects such as mosquitoes and help fertilize and pollinate plants. Additionally, scientists are using research on the enzyme in bats' saliva to develop an anticoagulant drug for humans. Overall, bats should be regarded as a positive aspect of our world today. So remember, we're thinking which detail is an example of a fact. A reads, bats, the infamously tiny creatures typically associated with vampires and Halloween candy, have a rich history that is not known by the average person. B reads, these days, most people would likely prefer to stay away from these flying mammals based on their reputations for carrying an array of diseases and are generally regarded as dangerous. Okay, so C reads, additionally, scientists are using research done on the enzyme in bat saliva to develop an anticoagulant drug for humans. D reads, overall, bats should be regarded as a positive aspect of our world today. So remember, we are going to be looking for words in these answer choices that perhaps signify opinions because we want to choose the answer choice that is the fact. Okay, let's take a look at the correct answer here. The correct answer is, additionally, scientists are using research done on the enzyme in bat saliva to develop an anticoagulant drug for humans. This is a fact. Scientists are doing research that's going to produce data, and this can be proven and is therefore factual information. If you're struggling with this, let's go ahead and look at the incorrect answer option so that we can see why these other answers are opinions. So on your screen, you see the 3 other answer options. So the fact that this answer option says rich history, not everyone is going to agree that the idea of the history of bats is rich. It's a personal point of view. Rich is an adjective and it's an opinion. Not everyone's going to agree with this. The second answer option, the statement most people would likely prefer, signifies an opinion. It cannot be proven as a fact because we don't know how most people would feel about this. This last answer option, bats should be regarded as a positive aspect. The word should here signifies an opinion. This is a personal belief held by the author that not everyone would perhaps agree with. Okay, so let's take a look at another example. We are going to always start by reading the question to establish our purpose for reading. So we are looking for which of the following is an example of an opinion from the paragraph here. So these answer options are most likely all facts. There's probably one opinion we're going to be looking for. So let's start by reading through the paragraph, thinking about what's an opinion and what is a fact. We're reading about wildflowers. Wildflowers are a gorgeous addition to any garden. The 2 most common life cycles of wildflowers are annual and perennial. Annuals bloom once, while perennials continue to return each year. Perennials usually take 2 years to bloom, and there's no best type of plant, but understanding the life cycles of flowers can be helpful. For example, annuals and perennials can work together to ensure a low-maintenance garden. If you are a first-time gardener, planting a mix of annuals and perennials is advised. The annuals will bloom first and fill the empty soil with blooms, thus helping to keep weeds away. During this time, perennials establish a root system and will bloom during the second year and continue to resurface year after year. Okay, so we're looking for which of these answer options is an opinion. Let's look for those opinion signal words. A reads, wildflowers are a gorgeous addition to any garden. B, there is no best type to plant, but understanding the life cycles of flowers can be helpful. C, if you're a first-time gardener, planting a mix of annuals and perennials is advised. D, during this time, perennials establish a root system and will bloom during the second year and continue to resurface year after year. So this answer option, wildflowers are a gorgeous addition to any garden, is an opinion. Gorgeous is an adjective that is used to describe a personal belief. Not everyone would agree that wildflowers are gorgeous. Here are the rest of our answer options. So the fact that this first answer option says that flowers can be helpful is not an opinion. It is just something that the author is stating. It's a pretty neutral statement. It's merely information that the reader should just consider. The second answer option here, thinking about this word advised. This sentence is a fact and it can be verified by experts. It's just some advice that the author is putting into the paragraph. It's not necessarily an opinion. So here's our last answer option. During this time, perennials establish a root system that will bloom during the second year and continue to resurface year after year. This is a fact and it can be verified by evidence. We can look it up to see if it's true or it's false. Doesn't contain any opinion words. Okay, so head over to the next lesson where you're going to get way more practice with fact and opinion. I'll meet you over there. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our steps for identifying facts and opinions before we dive into our practice. The first question you can ask yourself is this a detail that is verified by evidence or data in the passage? And the second one is this a detail that's based on a personal belief or point of view or judgment? So there is a paragraph in front of you titled World Bee Day. What I want you to do is I want you to read the question, and then I want you to read the paragraph and think about which statements in the answer options align with the question. So go ahead and pause the video here and attempt to answer. I will review the answer options with you when you're ready. Okay, so if you got the proclaimed father of beekeeping was surprisingly far from a scientist, you chose the correct answer. This is an opinion. The fact that the background is noted as surprising in the passage is indicative of the author's opinion. So this is perhaps not surprising to people. This is a word that is an adjective to describe how the author feels about this topic. All right, so the rest of these answer options are facts. This is factual information that can be verified by research. There are numbers, 20,000 species that are noted in this first answer options. The second one has a date in it, and it talks about this painter. You can go look up this information. It is true. In 2017, in the last answer option is a date. May 20th is World Bee Day. This is information that can be verified, so it is factual. Okay, so I know that was short practice for you, but we're going to dive into independent practice next. I will see you in the next lesson. Hey everyone, welcome to lesson 3 in the Fact and Opinion series for the HESI A2 entrance exam. I suggest that you pause here and read through these 2 steps to identifying fact and opinion just to refresh your memory, and then we're going to dive into the practice. Okay, so our first paragraph is titled The Decline of Bees, but I want you to start by reading the question, thinking about what it's asking for. Then you can dive into the paragraph and attempt to answer it. Press play when you're ready to move forward. Okay, so if you chose this answer option, due to the changes brought on by the lack of bees, people may have to rely on more protein-based diets. You got this correct. So the information that I have highlighted for you in the paragraph here is based on research. It's a verifiable fact. All right, so here's our first incorrect answer. The world believes that a loss of bees would have a drastic consequence on our way of life. So this statement, the world believes, is something that cannot be proven. We cannot poll every single person in the world and get this statement to be true or false. So that information is not available in the text as well. This is not what we are looking for. This is incorrect. Okay. So if you chose this answer option, if people support local bee pollination groups, the damage of the ecosystem may be less evident. This is incorrect. The author does not make any obvious remarks regarding people's support of local bee pollination groups. Even though there is information regarding the likely disruption of the ecosystem, this answer is not correct. Here's a quick tip for you guys. You have to read through the paragraph to be able to understand which is fact and which is opinion. On the HESI, you may be given information like this that is just incorrect and not in the passage at all. So you can't just read the answer options and get the correct answer. Don't get tripped up. Read the paragraph. All right, last but not least, we see the amount of misinformation surrounding bees is disappointing. The word disappointing signifies an opinion, so the author does not make any remarks regarding the lack of education surrounding this topic, and the word disappointing here signifies the author's opinion. Okay, so that was a really quick lesson for you guys. Here's what I want to review with you before you move on to the next skill. A fact, remember, is a statement that can be proven. It can be verified by data or statistics or quotes by experts, things like that. An opinion is something that is a personal belief or a judgment. It can be disputed, so not everyone would agree with it. And statements that are based on opinion really emphasize the author's feelings and their beliefs and or point of view. So I'll see you in the next skill. Go ahead, take a break, take a breather, and I'll be ready, waiting here for you when you're ready to move on. Hey everyone, welcome to the Inferences lesson series for the HESI A2. Today you will be able to make logical inferences about general ideas in a text. And you'll be able to distinguish between logical inferences that are supported by textual evidence and those that are not. Okay, so this is probably one of the most important skills that we are going to work on for the HESI. And throughout nursing school, you will have to use facts and information provided in academic literature from patients, from colleagues, and you're going to have to make inferences. You will make inferences in order to provide the best care for your patients, so this skill is very important. Okay, we have a lot of vocabulary here today. I always want you to take notes, make flashcards, do what you got to do. Let's dive in. So the word explicit means stated clearly and directly. There's no confusion. If I explicitly say to you, don't do that, you probably won't do that, or you know that I don't want you to do that. Implicit is something that's understood or implied and not directly stated. So if you're like walking towards the door and I'm like, or like, you probably understand that I don't want you to do that. Or don't want you to go outside, but I didn't say it directly. Okay, a logical inference is an implied idea formed by combining textual evidence and your background knowledge and reasoning. Now, textual evidence is information that's stated explicitly in the text. So text evidence is just a direct quote from the text. Background knowledge is what you bring to the table. It's what you already know about the topic, and it's maybe based on your life experience or your prior learning. Okay, stick with me here. Our key points for today are kind of long, but authors convey information or ideas to readers explicitly or implicitly. If an idea is explicit, it's directly stated by the author. If it's implicit, it's not directly stated, and you will need to use clues to make an inference. An inference, again, is an implied idea that combines text evidence and your background knowledge. You might see the term logical inference on the HESI in a question. It's just an inference that can be supported by evidence in the text. It's not different than an inference. It just has the word logical in front of it. So there are two types of inferences on your HESI exam. The first one is going to be general. It's make a general inference about the text. The second is specific. So specific inferences are made about a specific portion of the text or a topic within the text. I'm going to break all this down for you in an example next, so don't worry if you're not 100% with me yet. All right, for all you visual learners out there like me, here is just a quick little visual for you. Text evidence plus background knowledge equals inference. It's not that difficult, but some people struggle with this skill. So when you're making an inference, here's what you can ask yourself to help yourself out. What relevant textual evidence is stated explicitly in the text to support this? So what can I use from the text that supports it? Is the evidence strong enough to support this inference? What additional knowledge from outside the text can I combine with the text evidence to make this inference? So I know this may seem like a lot of information right now, but inferences are actually pretty easy. You make them every single day in your life. Okay, we're going to go through a really quick example. Here's our first example. The phlebotomist entered the patient's room, washed her hands, applied alcohol to the patient's arm, and inserted a needle directly into the protruding vein. Here's my question for you. In general, what's that phlebotomist doing? Make an inference. So, here's the inference I made. She's about to draw blood. I know this because I know what a phlebotomist does for a living. That's my background knowledge. And the actions of prepping a vein and inserting a needle into that vein are described. So as you can see, I used my background knowledge and information provided in the text, which is the evidence, to make a general inference about what this person is doing. All right, so here is our second example. The man wore a white covering over his face and body for protection. He reached down and calmly inserted puffs of smoke into the boxes. We could hear buzzing sounds begin faintly and gradually increase in volume. He swiftly removed thick frames of geometric material from each box. When back in the shed, the man meticulously cut into the thick comb structure to reveal an oozing viscous liquid. So, let's make a general inference. What's being described here? Here's my general inference. The man is harvesting honey from bees. He's covering his body to protect himself from the stings using that white outfit. He's using smoke to clear out the bees that begin to buzz. He's removing honeycomb from that hive and cutting into the comb to reveal honey. So, it's never explicitly stated that the man is harvesting honey, but I used my background knowledge and the evidence from the text to support that general inference. I know beekeepers wear outfits that cover their entire bodies. I also know that they use smoke to soothe bees before harvesting their honey. And finally, I know that hives are located in these cube structures, and beekeepers harvest the honey by taking out these panes from the hive, and then they collect the honey. Kind of looks like a window pane that you're pulling up. And so I used a lot of what I already know here to make a general inference about this scenario. Okay, so we're going to switch gears here and make a specific inference. So generally, we made an inference about what was going on in the last example. In this example, we're going to think about what inference we can make about the man, specifically the man. Think about it. All right, here's my inference. This man knows what he's doing. We can infer that because he's described as calm, swift, and meticulous. This is likely his career, or maybe it's a long-time hobby, and he's been doing this for a while. We can infer this because he is so familiar with this process of harvesting honey. Okay, so we just went through a few examples of general and specific inferences that we made ourselves. The next lesson, we're going to go through using multiple choice. So head over on to lesson number 2, and we will do some. Okay, here is lesson 2 in the inference series, and I just want to review with you some key points here about this skill. Remember, authors state information explicitly or implicitly. And if an idea is explicit, it's directly in the text. If it's implicit, then we need to make an inference to be able to figure out what's going on. And an inference is an implied idea about what's happening in the text and combines textual evidence with background knowledge and reasoning. A logical inference is just an inference. It's something that you can back up with text evidence. There are two types of inferences that you'll see on the HESI. One is general, one is specific. We're going to review examples next. Okay, so throughout these examples, you're going to have to pay attention to the titles because one is project-based learning, as you see here, and another title is very similar, but it's different. I'm trying to get you to pay attention to the text. What I'm going to do first here is start by reading this question. Based on the passage, which of the following inferences can be made about the origins of project-based learning? So remember, we're looking at the origins of it. Let's go ahead and read this paragraph. Project-based learning. Project-based learning was first used as an instructional approach to solve complex questions in the classroom, particularly involving active learning and student engagement. Rather than adhering to traditional lecture and drilling techniques, this type of learning encourages students to find answers through a project's various phases and finally its completion. In these cases, learners are often provided with a list of project specifications that result in the desired end product. According to experts, this system effectively teaches students how to follow directions correctly and work towards a common goal. As with most projects, students usually encounter problems which provide educators with the opportunity to offer guidance and feedback throughout teaching. Okay, I'm going to start by saying this. Most passages on your HESI are going to be like this length. They're not going to be too much longer. You might have a 2-paragraph one, but it's important for you to read through the paragraph so that you know what's going on as a whole. But now let's look back at this question again. This question is asking us about the origins of project-based learning, so like how it started. And I know that that's in like the first half of this paragraph, so that's what I'm really going to zoom in on. What I want you to do next is take a look at these answer options here, and knowing that you're going to be looking for the origins of project-based learning, attempt to answer this question. Join me again when you're ready for the explanations. Okay, so here is the correct answer. Project-based learning was created to provide students with a new type of learning experience. The text explains how project-based learning used methods very different from what had traditionally been used in classrooms. You see that in this orange color on your screen. Project-based learning encourages students to find answers through a project rather than learning through lectures and practice. So therefore, that we can infer that it's trying to provide students with a new type of learning experience. All right, here's our first incorrect answer. Struggling students craved a new type of learning. The text doesn't mention anything about students specifically wanting a new type of learning, so this answer is incorrect. There's no evidence to support it. Teachers wanting to move away from lecture-based learning is also incorrect. There's only one mention of lecture-based learning, and it doesn't suggest that teachers were complaining about it or that they were searching for something new. Project-based learning was created to allow students to ask more questions while learning is also incorrect. Although this may be true, the text does not mention students asking questions. Instead, it explains that project-based learning allows students to answer questions. Also, this has nothing to do with the origins. Okay, the next example that we are going to look at is the same paragraph. So sometimes you will see the same paragraph on the HESI and there will be multiple questions asked about it. That's why we are doing it this way for this skill. So let's start by reading the question. Based on the information from the paragraph, what can be inferred about project-based learning? So you're making a general inference here. In general, what can we infer about this topic? Pause the video here, try and get the correct answer, and I will meet you on the other side where we will review the answers. Okay, so here's our correct answer. Students learn additional skills such as planning, problem solving, teamwork, and reflection. So as you can see highlighted on your screen, the passage discusses the additional skills that students need to learn and use when creating their projects through this type of learning, so we can infer that they learn these additional skills. All right, here are our incorrect answers. Teachers think planning projects is easier than planning traditional lessons is incorrect. Teachers think that it's easier to plan projects than to plan traditional lesson materials. So these are really similar answer options, and this passage does not provide any information about whether or not teachers have an easier time planning project-based learning, and there's just no feedback given. Here's the last answer that's incorrect. Students have shown greater academic gains while participating in project-based learning. The passage doesn't provide data on student performance or academic gains, so we can't make this jump. Okay, so we just practiced with a general and a specific inference. What we're going to do next is jump into independent practice, so I'll see you in lesson 3. All right, everyone, welcome to lesson 3 in the Inferences series here for the HESI A2 prep. What I want you to do is just take a look at this review slide here and read through the key points that we've gone through throughout the first 2 lessons. Okay, so as I mentioned in the previous lesson, I need you to pay attention to the titles and the content of the paragraphs in general. We read about project-based learning in lesson 2. In lesson 3 here now, we're going to practice with a paragraph about problem-based learning. So what I want you to do is start by reading this question, then go back into the paragraph, and then answer the question. I suggest that you pause here and then press play when you're ready to move forward. All right, so we are making a general inference here. The topic of this paragraph was problem-based learning, and we're just trying to make an inference about it. So the correct answer is problem-based learning teaches students that having more than one answer to a problem is possible. The passage states that problem-based learning differs from other methods because the problems don't always have an answer or might have more than one answer, and that evidence is highlighted on your screen for you. All right, here are incorrect answer explanations. Here's the first one. Problem-based learning can be frustrating for students because there can be more than one correct answer. So the passage talks about more than one correct answer, but doesn't talk about how it might be frustrating for students, so we can't make this inference. Problem-based learning is used with students who have difficulty finding the answer to a problem. The passage doesn't discuss this teaching method used with only certain students. So this answer is incorrect. Problem-based learning is effective because it's used alongside traditional teaching methods. This passage explains how this method differs from traditional teaching methods, and it doesn't state that they're used together. Cannot make this inference. All right, so now in this example, what you're going to do is read a paragraph about project-based versus problem-based learning. Go ahead and start by reading that question, then dive into the paragraph and the answer options. Press pause now and play when you're ready to move forward. Okay, so before we dive into our correct answer, we need to just review the question. So what inferences can be made about the challenges, about these 2 different types of learning? Here's the correct answer. These methods require highly skilled teachers to facilitate student groups while meeting learning objectives. So the passage states that teachers who use these methods must be experienced with group work. It also mentions that many inexperienced teachers don't choose to use these methods because they worry that students will not be meeting their learning objectives. All right, so here are our incorrect answer options. The first 2 read, teachers who use these teaching methods are not paid as much as teachers who used traditional methods. That's incorrect. School districts are worried about losing funding if teachers don't use traditional teaching methods. So the passage doesn't discuss anything about how much teachers are paid or school funding. Here's our final incorrect answer option. Students often struggle with meeting learning objectives when these methods are used in their classrooms. This passage does not provide any information suggesting that students struggle with meeting learning objectives when using project-based or problem-based learning. Okay, you guys made it to the very end of this set of lessons. Congratulations. Just as a wrap up, here are key points again about explicit and implicit evidence in the text. Inferences are implied ideas where you combine your background knowledge with evidence from the text to make a logical inference. And don't forget, there are two types of inferences on the HESI, general and specific. I'm sure you crushed this. I'm so excited to see you in the next lesson. Head over there now and we can practice. Hey everyone, welcome to the Summarizing Lesson series for the HESI A2 entrance exam. I am Nicole, your instructor. By the end of this series of lessons, you are going to be able to determine which statement best provides a summary for the text. Throughout nursing school, you are going to have to gather a lot of different information and put it together. You're going to be asked to provide database summaries. You're going to put together case notes and patient history. Understanding how to provide a concise summary is really key to your communication as a nurse. Here are 3 key vocab words we are going to highlight throughout our lessons. I highly suggest that you pause and take notes if that's the type of learner you are. Our first one is summary. It's a brief statement that provides the reader with the main idea of the text. Main idea or central idea, you might see these terms used interchangeably, are just the big idea that the author wants to convey to the reader. And if you need a refresher, you can go back to the main idea lesson to review that. Supporting or key details are sentences that support the main idea in a passage. And again, we have another lesson that you've already likely watched about supporting details. You can go back and watch it if you'd like. All right, so here are key points. Again, a summary is a brief statement that provides the reader with the main idea, and it omits your personal opinion. So if you find an answer choice that has any sort of personal opinion word, go back to that fact and opinion lesson, refresh your memory if you need to. But if you see an opinion-based word in an answer choice, can't be a summary. It's incorrect. Okay, so here are some questions you can ask yourself when you are identifying a summary of a text. Does this statement accurately represent what the text says? So is this information based on the text? Does this statement include the text's main idea and key details? Does this statement summarize the entire text? It has to be the summary is the entire text, not just the beginning, middle, or end. And is the statement objective? Does it omit personal opinion or judgments? So we're going to run through a couple examples here. This first one is a passage titled "The Benefits of Fruit." What I'm going to do is read through it with you, and then we are going to create a summary. So, benefits of fruit. Most people are likely familiar with the phrase, "an apple a day keeps the doctor away," which touts the importance of adding fruits to one's diet to ward off general maladies. However, most fruits contain diverse qualities that provide specific benefits, many of which are not well known. Dietitians and doctors agree that examining specific aspects of different fruits can provide useful information regarding their importance in our lives, as well as how to implement them into our daily diets effectively. Okay, so let's take a look at this paragraph and see if we can create our own summary. So I can gather that the topic of this paragraph is based on fruits and wellness. And now that I've identified that topic, I'm going to look for supporting and key details so I can really understand the main idea and then get a summary. So here's the first detail that stands out to me. It's highlighted on your screen and it reads, "Most fruits contain diverse qualities that provide specific benefits, many of which are not well known." In my own words, fruit have specific health benefits. Now here's the next detail that stands out for me. It reads, "Examining specific aspects of different fruits can provide useful information regarding their importance in our lives." So in my own words, fruits have specific health benefits that should be noted for our health. Okay, so based on the information that I've pulled from the text, the topic, and 2 key details, I'm going to create a summary statement. Here's my summary statement. Understanding the specific health benefits provided by different types of fruits can help people make informed choices about how best to include fruits in their personal diets. That's a summary I came up with based on the topic and the key details. You're not going to have to come up with one by yourself, but it's important to know this process for your nursing career. Next, we're going to look at more so what the exam will look like with some multiple choice-based practice. Okay, so this is another paragraph titled 3 servings daily. As usual, I want to start by reading the question, which is the best summary of the paragraph? Now we have to read the paragraph and decide which statement below is the best summary. Remember, what's the topic and what details does the author use to describe the main idea? Contrary to popular belief, simply eating 3 servings of fruit a day is not enough to guarantee a healthy diet. Rather, experts state that most people should eat at least 3 portions of different types of fruit each day. In fact, they believe that color is the most important and distinguishing feature that can relay pertinent information about the nutrients and benefits of each fruit. For instance, red fruits are high in lycopene, a powerful antioxidant known to improve heart health and lower one's risk of certain types of cancers. Orange fruits, on the other hand, help with memory and vision support, thanks to substances such as carotenoids and zeaxanthin. By studying the different properties of various types of fruit based on color, it's possible to attain a holistic range of health benefits in just a few servings. Now we're going to look at these answer choices and we're going to decide which one is the best summary of the paragraph as a whole. A reads, people need to diversify their servings of fruit each day to achieve a wider range of health benefits. B reads, experts believe that a fruit's color provides the most significant information regarding its health benefits. C reads, since red fruits contain high levels of the powerful antioxidant lycopene, they can help lower the risk of certain cancers. D reads, by examining the health benefits of different fruits based on their color, it's clear that red and orange fruits should be eaten daily. I'm going to go ahead and say that we can eliminate answer options C and D here because these are very specific to just pieces of information that are in the text. It's too specific. It is not an overall summary. All right, so here's our correct answer. Remember, we were looking between A and B here. People need to diversify servings of fruit each day to achieve a wider range of health benefits. This is correct because this sentence provides a concise summary of the paragraph's main ideas about why and how eating different types of fruits each day provides more health benefits. There are statements in the text that read, experts state that most people should eat at least 3 portions of different types of fruit each day, and through studying the different properties of various types of fruit based on color, it's possible to attain a holistic range of health benefits. These statements prove that this answer is correct. All right, so here are our incorrect answer options. Experts believe that a fruit's color provides the most significant information regarding health benefits. So this information is included in that paragraph, but it's just a supporting detail about how to diversify fruit intake. So it's not the main idea of the paragraph and does not summarize the entire paragraph. Here's our second incorrect answer option. Since red fruits contain high levels of powerful antioxidant lycopene, they can help lower the risk of certain cancers. This is included, but again, it's just a supporting detail like I touched on before. It's providing evidence of the connection between a fruit's color and health benefits. It's not the main idea. It's just one idea in the paragraph, a supporting detail. Last but not least, we have, by examining the health benefits of different types of fruit based on their color, it's clear that red and orange fruits should be eaten daily. So, the first part of the statement is accurate based on the information given in the paragraph, but the paragraph does not explicitly state that red and orange fruits should be eaten daily. This is an option that fails to provide a cohesive summary. So what that means is that this paragraph doesn't say, hey, just eat more red and orange fruits. Red and orange fruits are just examples of fruits that are able to be added to your diet to diversify. These are not the end-all be-alls. This cannot be a summary. Okay, now that we've practiced going through and writing our own summary and with a multiple choice, we're going to dive into the next lesson where you will do a little bit more multiple choice practice with me. I will see you there. Okay, welcome to lesson 2 in the summarizing lesson series for the HESI A2 entrance exam. We are going to start by a quick review of the key points that pertain to summaries. So let's get started. A summary is a brief statement that provides the reader with the main idea of the text, and it omits personal opinion. If you see any opinion words in any answer choice, cross it out. It's done. It's not correct. All right, on to our practice question. So our first practice question aligns with this piece called earthquakes. What you're going to do is read the question, read the passage, attempt to answer the question, and then press play when you're ready to move forward and see the answer. Good luck. Okay, so much of what has been deduced regarding Earth's inner layers is due to the occurrence of earthquakes is correct. So this is correct based on that first sentence that's highlighted on your screen here. It is the best answer since it provides the most comprehensive idea of the paragraph. So the nucleus located in the Earth's center has been difficult to uncover. The paragraph does contain information regarding the nucleus, but does not state that it's difficult to uncover. Additionally, this could not be the paragraph's main idea since it's only included as a supporting detail. It is not the main idea. It's not a comprehensive summary of the text. All right, here's another incorrect answer option. Even with new technology, earthquakes will be the most important resource used by geologists when understanding Earth's subterranean levels. This is incorrect. The paragraph contains information regarding technology, earthquakes, and how geologists use this information. However, the paragraph does not include an opinionated statement involving the fact that earthquakes will be the most important resource. We saw an opinion word here. It's incorrect. Even with new technology, the last sentence of the paragraph implies the opposite. Okay, you had to read that paragraph to get this correct. Here is our last answer option. The location of the Earth's nucleus has posed challenges for geologists looking to uncover valuable information. So this paragraph contains one sentence regarding the Earth's nucleus, and it's not the best summary for the entire paragraph. Okay, so quick review for you to sum up this lesson number 2. Remember, a summary is a brief statement that provides the reader with the main idea of the text and omits any personal opinion. Let's go ahead and head over to lesson 3 where we'll do a little bit more independent practice. I will see you there. All right, welcome to lesson 3 of the summarizing lesson series. Go ahead and pause your screen here and read through these 2 quick bullet points to review key details associated with summarizing. All right, so our first practice question that we're going to be looking at has to do with seismic waves. What I want you to do is read through the question and then read through the paragraph and attempt to answer it on your own. You can press pause and then press play when you're ready to move forward, and I will review the answers with you. Good luck. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the correct answer. It reads, advanced devices have helped uncover detailed information regarding Earth's layers, including their composition and order. So this is the correct answer. The answer option is a succinct summary and includes all of the information given in the paragraph, and it ranges from categorical order to the fact that metals are found in the inner core of the Earth, and this is noted with the word composition. I've highlighted evidence throughout the paragraph for you to help show you that this answer choice is correct. All right, so let's take a look at our first incorrect answer option. Earth's layers are categorized based on their distance from its surface. So although this information is included, it's not the main idea, so it cannot be a summary of the entire paragraph. It omits the information regarding the tools that are used for studying the layers and their materials. Here's our next incorrect answer option. Geologists have realized that metallic substances can be found in Earth's inner core. So this information in the statement is just a supporting detail. It is regarding the substances in the Earth's layers, but it's not the main idea of the paragraph. Okay, everyone, last but not least, we have Earth's crust does not contain substances located in the mantle and the outer core. So this statement does not explicitly state that the substances located in the mantle and outer core are not found in Earth's crust. In any case, this supporting detail does not offer a concise summary of the paragraph as a whole, so it's incorrect. All right, that is all the practice that we have for you today for summaries. What I want you to do is take a brief look at these 2 bullet points. Remember, a summary is a brief statement that is the main idea of the text, and it omits personal opinion. Be sure that you read the paragraph when you are working through questions like this, because sometimes on the HESI, the writers of the test will try and trip you up and will throw in information that's not included in the passage as a distracting answer choice. That's why it's really important to read the whole paragraph. This is the last lesson in our series. I hope that these lessons were helpful for you. Thank you so much for hanging with me. I will see you next time.